Have you ever thought you finally found the one person who would never hurt you? That's what I thought when I met Ryan. My name's Emily, I'm 27, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had stumbled into something real. We met at a friend's small get-together, nothing fancy, but the way he carried himself caught my attention right away. Ryan, 29, was charming in that effortless way. Kind smile, witty jokes, and the type of guy who really looked at you when you spoke. I didn't even expect much. But by the end of the night, he asked for my number. And I felt a little spark I hadn't felt in years. The first few weeks were honestly like a dream. Late-night phone calls that lasted until sunrise. Dinner dates where we laughed until our stomachs hurt. And little gestures that made me believe he was different. He'd show up with coffee on my busy mornings, text me just to say he was thinking of me, and talk about the future like I was meant to be part of it. For once, I felt safe, secure, happy. My friends even noticed how I glowed when I talked about him. I remember telling my best friend, I think he might be the one. I believed it wholeheartedly, but life has a way of surprising you. Sometimes in the best ways, and other times in ways you could never imagine. Looking back, I realized those first weeks were setting me up for a heartbreak I never saw coming. At first, I brushed it off. But looking back now, the little warning signs were always there. It's strange how love can blur your vision. Ryan was attentive, but sometimes too attentive in ways that didn't sit right. For example, he never wanted me to tag him in photos on social media. He'd say, I just like to keep my personal life private. I wanted to respect that, so I didn't question it. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered, if he's proud of this relationship, why hide it? Then there were the sudden phone calls he'd take in another room. He'd laugh, lower his voice, and if I asked, he'd say it was just a buddy from work. I wanted to believe him, but I'd feel this knot of unease tighten in my chest every time. Another thing, he was oddly vague about introducing me to his family. I'd bring it up casually. When do I get to meet your folks? And he'd always have a reason. They live out of state, or they're really private people. I told myself it was no big deal. After all, not everyone is quick to blend families into relationships. Still, I couldn't ignore how he always seemed to be rushing. If we were out at dinner and someone he knew walked in, he'd grow stiff and suddenly want to leave. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself, maybe he's just awkward. But here's the thing. When your gut tells you something is off, it usually is. I silenced mine because I didn't want to lose the happiness I thought I had finally found. It happened on a Friday night. I remember because Ryan had told me he couldn't hang out, something about working late and then crashing at home. I didn't question it. But later that evening, I was scrolling through social media when a post popped up that stopped me cold. A friend of a friend had tagged Ryan at a dinner party, and sitting right next to him was a woman with her hand on his arm. At first, I thought, okay, maybe it's just a friend. But then I noticed something. She wasn't wearing just any ring. She was wearing an engagement ring. And Ryan's hand was resting on top of hers like it belonged there. My heart dropped. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. I clicked through the photos, and each one made me feel sicker. There he was, laughing, smiling, looking completely at home with this woman. And the captions? People congratulating them on their engagement. I wanted to believe it was some kind of mistake, but the truth hit me like a train. While he was holding me close and calling me his girlfriend, he was also planning a wedding with someone else. I remember pacing my apartment, tears streaming down my face. Anger burned through me, but beneath it was heartbreak. How could he look me in the eye and say he loved me while living this double life? Every "I miss you" text, every excuse, every vague answer suddenly made sense. In that moment, the blinders fell off. I wasn't just hurt, I was humiliated. And I knew I couldn't sit back and pretend it never happened. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying the pictures over and over again, each one a knife in my chest. By morning, I had made up my mind. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I drove to Ryan's apartment, my heart pounding like it was about to jump out of my chest. When he opened the door, he smiled like nothing was wrong. That fake smile made my blood boil. "Who is she, Ryan?" I asked, my voice shaking but firm. His smile faltered. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and shoved the pictures in front of him. His face drained of color. For a moment, he just stared, and then he tried to laugh it off. "Oh, that? It's just a misunderstanding. She's a friend." "Don't you dare lie to me again!" I snapped. My hands were trembling, but my voice was steady. "They're congratulating you on your engagement, Ryan." Engagement. How stupid do you think I am? He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and finally admitted it. "Okay, yes. Her name's Melissa. We've been together for a while." I felt the room spin. "So while you were telling me you loved me, you were planning a wedding with her?" He didn't answer. Silence filled the room, and that silence said more than words ever could. At that moment, my anger took over. "You've wasted my time, my trust, and my heart. You don't get to play me and walk away like it's nothing." My voice cracked, but I refused to let him see me crumble. I walked out, slamming the door behind me, my tears mixing with fury. And as painful as it was, I knew this wasn't the end. I wasn't done yet. When I left Ryan's apartment, it felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel, tears blurring my vision. I had never felt so betrayed. The man I thought loved me had been living a double life, and I was the fool who didn't see it. The next few days were brutal. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't even focus at work. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was him apologizing, begging me to stay. But at the same time, I dreaded seeing his name. When he finally did text, it was cold and short. "I think it's better if we don't see each other anymore. I'm moving forward with Melissa." That one sentence shattered me all over again. It was like everything we had shared meant nothing to him. The laughter, the late-night talks, the promises, all thrown away like trash. But then something unexpected happened. My best friend, Emily, came over one night with pizza and ice cream. She sat with me while I cried, listened without judgment, and reminded me of something I'd forgotten. I still had worth. She looked me in the eyes and said, "He doesn't define you. You're stronger than this, and you're not gonna let him win." That night, something inside me shifted. I realized Ryan might have taken my trust, but he wasn't gonna take my future. I wasn't gonna let his betrayal chain me down. The pain was still there, but slowly it was transforming into something else, determination. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. Rebuild myself, piece by piece, until I became someone even he couldn't ignore. The weeks after Ryan's betrayal became the hardest, but also the most defining period of my life. I was tired of crying myself to sleep, tired of letting his choice control my happiness. So one morning, I looked in the mirror and made a promise. I wasn't going to stay broken. I was going to rebuild. I started small. I joined a local gym, not to impress anyone, but to feel strong again. At first, it was awkward, and I felt out of place. But slowly I noticed changes, not just in my body, but in my confidence. Every mile I ran on that treadmill felt like I was leaving a piece of pain behind. Emily encouraged me to explore things I'd always pushed aside. I signed up for a painting class, something I'd loved as a teenager but abandoned in the rush of adulthood. Sitting in front of a blank canvas, letting colors speak for emotions I couldn't put into words, it was therapy in itself. I also focused on my career. Instead of dragging myself through work, I poured energy into new projects. My boss noticed, and for the first time, I felt like my professional life was truly my own, not something I balanced around Ryan's needs. Slowly, people around me began to notice the change. Friends complimented my new energy, my brighter smile. Even strangers seemed drawn to me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rediscovering who I was outside of someone else's shadow. And the best part? For the first time in months, when I looked at my reflection, I saw a woman who wasn't broken. I saw someone powerful, resilient, and worthy of so much more than lies. Looking back now, I realize Ryan's betrayal wasn't the end of my world. It was the beginning of a better one. At the time, it felt like my whole life had collapsed. But in truth, the collapse cleared the way for me to rebuild stronger. I learned that love without honesty is just an illusion. Trust can't survive in the dark, and when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. As painful as it was, Ryan's lies forced me to open my eyes to my own worth. The glow-up wasn't about him, it was about me. I discovered passions I'd ignored, built confidence I never knew I had, and created a life that finally felt mine. And the sweetest part? I no longer needed his validation. Happiness didn't come from Ryan or anyone else, it came from within me. There were nights when I wondered, why me? But now I think, why not me? Maybe I needed to go through that storm to find my strength. Maybe life needed to break me in order to show me that I could heal, rise, and shine brighter than before. So here's the lesson I'll never forget. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who disappoint us the deepest. But their betrayal doesn't define us. Our response does. We can choose to stay down, or we can choose to rise. I chose to rise. To anyone listening, if you've been hurt, lied to, or abandoned, know this: your story isn't over. You are stronger than you think, and sometimes losing someone is exactly what makes room for the life you truly deserve.